Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey, it's Michael Zapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Jeff Robbins joining us. Jeff, welcome.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. So let's get started with those who just aren't familiar with you and your work. Jeff, just take a moment and explain what you do.
Well, I like to say I've had many careers over my life. Currently, I'm a business coach. I do solo business mentoring and coaching. But starting back in the 90s, I was a relatively successful musician. I had a record deal and toured with the Lollapalooza tour and stuff like that. Prior to that, I did web stuff. I worked on one of the first commercial websites, actually the first commercial website. And I started I'm jumping around here. And in 2006, I started a web development company called Lullabot. This was after my music career sort of run its course, and built that company up to about 65 employees before exiting about 2 years ago.
Right. Let's actually kind of go back to Lullabot, because I know that was like your digital strategy, design, and training agency, I believe is how you refer to it. And you work with some very well-known brands like Martha Stewart and WWE and Turner, Intel, Harvard, MIT, Fast Company, BBC, right? A whole bunch of others that people would certainly know. How did you get such well-known clients?
Practice.
Practice what?
Goodness. So we were kind of one of the first Drupal development companies. And for people that don't know, Drupal is an open source web content management system. So WordPress is a content management system that kind of focused on blogging, sort of started as a blogging platform. Drupal has always been much more abstract. And so you could build YouTube with it. It's probably not the best tool to build YouTube with, but you could do it in a weekend if you know what you're doing. But back in 2006, people hadn't really heard of Drupal. There really weren't any kind of dominant open source content management systems. And I stumbled onto Drupal, having, as I said, worked on the web basically since 1993, and thought, wow, this has a lot of potential. If we could just come in and help companies, consult with companies and help them use this, there could be a good business here. And there was.
So how did you do that? Like, to start off, I mean, I get what you're saying. You were kind of like first to market or early, and that can certainly create an advantage. But if a lot of these companies had not even heard of Drupal yet because it was so early, how did you actually get their business? I mean, like, were you making cold calls? Were you sending letters? Were you attending events? What did you do to get the Lullabot and Drupal name in front of ideal clients?
So remember how I said I was a musician in the 90s? I used exactly the same stuff that I learned in promoting a band back then to promote Lullabot, to promote Drupal, to kind of share this. We started a podcast. We started a newsletter. We started doing events. We started doing training. We started just going out and trying to meet people and talk about this stuff. And it was an easy sell, right? I mean, it's free software compared to kind of the dominant players at the time were like $1 million a year just for the license fee. And so there was that. So maybe I'm downplaying. We also found some really great, really talented people to go out there and kind of share their knowledge and build a buzz, kind of in the same way that you do in putting together a band, building a buzz around music.
So Jeff, I don't want to let you off the hook too easily here, because you shared a lot of different things, right? In terms of promotion of a podcast or an event or going out to meet people. Just one of those, if we look at them as like going out and meeting people. And a lot of people are challenged by that. You might know who you need to go and meet, but actually reaching out to them is one source of fear and can cause some roadblocks. But then the other is actually when you talk to those people and when you kind of get a hold of them, what do you say? So I know we're going back in time here a little bit, but if you just look at maybe some of the best practices or the approach that worked best for you, when you knew who you wanted to land, so whether it was Intel or Harvard or any example that you might want to choose, how did you actually, first of all, get in front of them? And then when you did get in front of them, what did you do or what did you say that allowed you to actually start a meaningful conversation?
It's sort of two parts to that question. So let me sort of address the first one, which is you're saying that you talk to a lot of consultants who have a hard time networking, have a hard time sort of going out there and meeting people and getting in front of people. And there are a lot of reasons why that's hard. I mean, there's sort of fear that comes into it, but I come across this all the time in my coaching work. And what I tell my coaching clients is think empathy, right? Instead of thinking about this, that you're trying to get something from these people, instead that you're sharing something. They have needs, right? They need solutions to their problems. So focus on your stuff. Make sure that you've got stuff that actually helps them, that you're not just selling bullshit, that you've got some quality, something that you want to share, knowledge or experience or connections, whatever those things are. And then you're helping. Think of it as helping rather than kind of trying to get one over. I think oftentimes when we think of sales, we think of this sort of smarmy, inauthentic kind of sales process. But really, sales is just connecting with people. And if you can kind of think of it that way, it's a whole lot easier.
So that's definitely, I agree with you. Like we share that with clients as well. And it's an important mindset to have. Did you have that back in the day when you got started? Or would you say that developed over time and you kind of just started to see like, oh yeah, there's a better way to think about this?
That's how we started Lullabot. I mean, it was about that. We started it because we wanted to share Drupal with a larger audience. I mean, it was really sort of a higher mission kind of thing. I don't know if you've ever read the book Tribal Leadership, but that's a great book that sort of talks about sort of trying to find a higher purpose for your business or your organization. And for us, there was this great open source software. And the more people that used it, the better the software would become. And the more people could use it because the better it would be. It was this really wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really powerful idea of finding something in what you do that is for the greater good, or it's just something that is bigger than just your business or just making some revenue, but something that really drives you and motivates you and inspires you. And I know when I've attended certain events or worked with certain coaches or mentors over the years, you get off a call, you get out of the event, and you feel like inspired and motivated by that. And I think if more people could kind of channel that or recreate that in their business by finding something that really gets them going, they would not only enjoy their work a lot more, but they'd probably be a lot more successful at it too.
Yeah. I mean, shoot higher, think global, think wider, think making the world a better place rather than just, I've got to go to this networking event and meet people, or I've got to make these cold calls, or I've got to, even just the actual consulting itself, the talking to people can feel like your problem is minuscule and I'm trying to help you solve this minuscule. Think about what is going to be solved by solving this problem. In the case of Lullabot, we're oftentimes building web applications or larger things that are these communication devices to connect with people. And that's a much better feeling than I need to figure out how to import this data,
Definitely. Okay. So now to the second part, which is when you actually got in front of people, how did that work?
So I've got this concept that I call boomerangs. And maybe it's sort of more, I guess it's inbound sales, outbound marketing, as opposed to outbound sales. And you just keep kind of go, again, sort of cast a wide net, go speak at a conference or throw a conference, or in Lullabot's case, we did a whole lot of training events that people were paying to come to. It encouraged us to make sure that we were experts enough in order to speak in front of them. And then we would get to know these people over the course of 3 days or a week or however long we were training them.
So was that a training event on Drupal that you're referring to? Okay. So,
yeah.
So it wasn't about Lullabot and your business. It was about really like Drupal as a technology. Let us help you to teach. And by you doing the teaching and working with them, that obviously brings them closer to your brand.
Yeah. And then also throwing free events as well. I mean, as much as we would give away for free, we found each of those things was a boomerang. You throw it out and sometimes it comes back. You don't know when it's going to come back. It might not come back. But then 6 months down the road, someone calls up, Sony Music called up and said, hey, listen, you guys are great. I've been listening to your podcast for 6 months now. I love you guys. We want to hire you. I think you're hilarious. Can you guys start next week?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we've got a $200,000 project, whatever it was, this significant project. And we'd already made that first impression. Now, like we all kind of showed up to this initial phone call, all kind of buttoned up and ready to be our professional selves. But we'd been our casual selves on the podcast for this whole time. And they'd gotten to know us, the real us. And we didn't have to have that facade. And so I think in terms of targeting, my experience has been you kind of think about who your targets are. You think about what they want. Again, this empathy thing, what they want, where they are, and then just try to be there. It's not this manipulative thing. It's almost more of this sort of universal spiritual kind of like, just like throw the boomerangs out, throw them in their direction and maybe they'll come back. But if they don't, that's okay. And what we found was that others would, and that's okay too.
So Jeff, we work with several owners of agencies and consulting firms in our coaching program that feel like they're doing a lot of work and having to provide a lot of deliverables for their clients, and they're tired of it. They want to move more into strategy, more into consulting and advisory type of work to create more leverage, higher levels of profit. Did you ever feel that way when you ran your agency?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
Well, it kind of worked backwards. I mean, we started initially as a consulting company. When we started Lullabot, it was just consulting. We didn't do development. There weren't enough Drupal developers out there for us. I mean, it was just 2 of us that started the company. If we took on development projects directly, then we would be full up with 1 client. Arguably, we'd need to hire more people if we got 1 client. And what we wanted to do was sort of replicate ourselves, replicate our knowledge, share. And so probably the first 2 or 3 years of Lullabot, we probably got to about 12, 13 people, just kind of as a consulting company, which was interesting because we were always so full up with work that although we were doing all these things, these training things, these speaking at events, doing all these podcasts, we never really were selling ourselves because we were so full of work. But then what we found was that as the Drupal ecosystem was starting to grow, it became harder and harder to find developers to train or particularly to put on these projects. So Lullabot started a development arm and a design arm and all of the stuff to become a full service agency that it is now.
And how did you manage that? Because there's a lot of people, right, who either are doing, let's say, just one, but many times people are doing some consulting and advisory and strategy, but also some development or some kind of deliverable. Were there any best practices that you identified or systems or processes that you used to be able to ensure that you were still doing high margin profitable work while being able to continue to scale the business?
I'm going to be very human with you right now, Michael. No, at least not at first. I mean, we started a business not because we wanted to start a business. We started a business because we didn't want to work for other people. We'd worked at other companies and it had felt inefficient, ineffective, and sort of soulless. And so we wanted to build a company that was soul-based and mission-based. Like I said, I mean, in retrospect, that's what it was. I don't think we thought of it so much that way at the time. It was just like, hey, let's do awesome, cool stuff and work with awesome, cool people. Wouldn't that be awesome? So we really weren't kind of focusing on the profit margins and KPIs and all that kind of stuff until that range that we got to probably about 20 plus people. I mean, we were obviously keeping an eye on the money and wanted to make sure that we had enough money coming in to pay the people, but simply sustaining the business and working in this awesome place with all these awesome people and all these awesome clients was exactly as rewarding as one might expect it would be. It was great. And that's what we wanted to build the company on, not on
metrics and KPIs and got it. Yeah.
And eventually we realized that we needed to focus on that stuff to sustain the business, to make sure that there was some solid sustainability and we wouldn't burn out, because we felt like here we had been running this business for, 7 years, building all these Fortune 500 websites, and we had nothing to show for it. Like that would burn a person out. And so the making sure that everybody's taken care of aspect. But again, I think it really came from more of an empathetic place. I want to provide job security and sustainability of the company rather than I want to buy a yacht.
Right. Makes sense. Was there any sticks with you right now that when you were running that agency and involved in the growth of going from just 2 of you to 12 and to 20 and to 50 plus, that looking back, you go like, wow, that was a really kind of pivotal moment, or that was such a big lesson. And if I now was to speak to someone running an agency or a consultancy, I would definitely tell them to avoid doing that, or I would definitely suggest they do this earlier.
Well, if we're finding a theme here, I'm talking about sort of mission-driven kind of thinking, empathy, finding your soul in this. And so I think that's a realization that I had. I think so many different thoughts are sort of coming to me all at once here. I've got this theory, this concept that growth inflection points happen in powers of 2. At some point I'll write this into an article, but instead I just keep mentioning it on every podcast that will have me. And so if you've got a company of one person, the sole proprietorship, just even call it a company sometimes doesn't quite feel right. But if you want to make it 2 people, you need to come up with at least some agreements. Are these people 50-50 partners? Is the second person an employee? This is a difficult transition to make. 4 people, it has its own issues. Now you've got something that kind of feels more legitimate. 8 people is about the point where you realize, oh my God, I'm running an actual business here. I've got to be responsible for people are coming in expecting job security. 16 people starts to feel that much more like a business, and you need to start to get into. And this is where I say, finding that human stuff and kind of looking into your soul of who you are around that 16-person point, starting to think about things like core values, mission statement, vision statement, all that kind of stuff that I think a lot of companies put off until they're over 100 people. Lullabot, I should say, is a fully distributed company. Lullabot has never had a central office where people work. People are spread out all across the world. And for people that are interested in finding out more information about running a remote business and distributed companies, I started a website called Yonder at yonder.io, where I have a podcast and interview people about running remote teams. And so one of the things that happens when you've got a team that's remote, they're not all in the same space together, is you lose that sort of innate feeling of togetherness, in syncness, and you kind of start to need to get a little bit more formal about things that would be otherwise casual in a co-located office. So culture, what is the culture of who are we? As we hire our 17th employee, what should we be looking for? Like I said, I think a lot of co-located companies don't think about that stuff because they feel like they can see what the culture is. They feel like they can relate to each other. But in my opinion, they are wrong. For everyone, it's about that 16-person point where you really should start thinking about those kinds of gooey, qualitative kind of things like core values and culture and stuff like that.
Jeff, so about 3 years ago or so, I believe you transitioned from Lullabot into coaching and consulting as an independent. What have you found most challenging in that time about being a solo independent consultant and coach?
Well, first of all, I really enjoy it. It's so great to kind of connect with people and help them with their problems. I don't have all of the information. I don't think anyone has all of the information. And as consultants, we probably shouldn't even try to sell ourselves as having all the information. But knowing and having the experience that I can help, I can just talking it out, there's value in that. And I do have a lot of experience with this stuff and a lot of opinions and tend to be kind of philosophical around this stuff where I think a lot of people tend to just kind of move forward. I sit there and think, what lesson can I learn from this? And how can I share that with other people? So that's been super enjoyable. One of the nice things about coming at this out of an exit is that I'm not kind of desperate for the next thing. I'm kind of can do it pretty casually for a while. And so I'm building up the practice relatively slowly without a whole lot of desperation. It seems like as soon as I put that on my LinkedIn profile, I got about 8,000 people who contacted me saying, I sell consulting services. I can get your name out there. And I've generally shied away from that because I kind of prefer, as I said, kind of throw out these boomerangs and have people come to me because they want me, not because they want something.
And so what are you doing right now? Like what's working best for you right now when it comes to getting new clients or inquiries for your coaching and consulting services currently?
Word of mouth is really the best thing. And the people I'm working with are happy, and they're happy to share the word. And I go speak at conferences when I can. And I really like going out and meeting people. And I love talking on podcasts and sharing the word that way. And even with Yonder, it's not directly talking about this, but it is in the same realm of sort of helping people that run businesses or remote teams to figure out how to do that. And we're kind of focusing specifically on remote work there, but it's sort of a subset of what I do as a mentor and coach.
So you had a successful exit from Lullabot. That's kind of giving you a bit of runway. So there isn't so much stress to worry about paying the bills and so forth. You're getting clients mainly from word of mouth. In the 3 years or so that you've made that transition into coaching and consulting for yourself and working with clients, what is one challenge that stands out to you? One thing that you kind of maybe ran up against that maybe held you back for a little bit, or just something that you had to kind of grapple with or work through?
I think for anyone who's consulting, and this is the same feeling I had back when I was on the front line consulting with Lullabot, is sort of going into a situation with people who are desperate, aggressive. They need help. It can feel like this sort of a battle of the minds sometimes, this kind of where they want to test you and they want to, do you know your stuff? I need help. You have to understand I need help. And here again, trying to break it down, find the empathy and get to the point where like, hey, we're just humans. Let's be a little bit vulnerable with each other. And instead of talking about trying to fight over who knows more, let's admit what we don't know and try to work collaboratively to solve that. Because if you don't share with me what you don't know, I'm not going to be able to help you. That's why you have me here. And if you won't allow me to share what I don't know, then you're not going to be able to truly trust me. And we're not going to have a trusting, respectful relationship that's going to move us forward. So that kind of stuff, I think, is a thing I come down to every now and then. It doesn't happen nearly as much now in the sort of coaching realm as it did back in Lullabot when we were stepping into these very big buildings with a very small team.
Right, for sure. Well, Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on today, and also want to make sure that people can learn more about your work and what you're up to. So what's the best place for them to go to?
Well, if people are interested in finding out more about my coaching, jjeff.com is my personal site and the place where you can get in touch with me about that. That's jjeff.com. And for people that are interested in anything having to do with remote work, yonder.io is the place where we talk about that stuff.
Fantastic. We'll have all that linked up in the show notes. And again, Jeff, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.